Hi, I'm Richard Lang. Today I want to talk about the BAASS MUFON SIP Project, which was at the time the most advanced rapid response UFO investigative team in the world that was funded by the Defense Intelligence Agency, and it was facilitated through Bigelow Aerospace and operated by the Pentagon. I wanted to share with you some of my experience being involved in that program and give you some insight on how it was set up and how it operated. Hopefully, this will be a bit of a historical account of how the project was run and facilitated 15 years ago. Aerospace Research Operations is an organization that's domiciled in Virginia and registered with the State Corporation Commission. Also known by the acronym AEROPS, which is a scientific research cooperative that's focused on unidentified anomalous phenomena and the associated high strangeness and paranormal effects that typically result after an encounter. The Pentagon's secret UFO program was exposed on December 16, 2017 by the Washington Post in an article titled, "Head of Pentagon's Secret UFO Office Sought to Make Evidence Public." And then later, the New York Times article in December as well by Helen Cooper, Rath Blumenthal, and Leslie Keene, "Growing Auras and Black Money, the Pentagon's Mysterious UFO Program." In 2007, behind the scenes, the Defense Intelligence Agency was secretly preparing to fund several UFO UAP research programs, which were ultimately associated with MUFON through the Pentagon's Advanced Aerospace Weapons System Application Program, known as OSAP. The OSAP program functioned on both classified and unclassified levels. It was operated jointly out of the Pentagon and, at least for a time, at the underground complex in Las Vegas, Nevada, owned and managed by Bigelow Aerospace. In 2007, Bigelow Aerospace was an American space technology company based in North Las Vegas that manufactured and developed expanded space station modules. It was owned by Robert Bigelow, a billionaire who was close friends with Harry Reid, who served in the U.S. Senate as a member of Congress and was responsible for funding the OSAP program. At that time, MUFON was the largest international UFO research organization in the world. Over a period of 30-plus years, MUFON had created a very special, complex database that was composed of UFO witness reports and investigations. These reports were submitted by witnesses from the general public and accumulated on a web-based MUFON site known as CMS, or Case Management System. BAASS, Bigelow Aerospace Advanced Space Studies, was a sister company to Bigelow Aerospace and a research organization that was focused on identification, evaluation, and acquisition of novel and emerging future technologies worldwide. BAASS was headquartered in the secure underground complex at Bigelow Aerospace in Las Vegas. In January of 2008, BAASS was registered as an LLC in Nevada, and BAASS was created in part to secure the bid money for the research project and get the funds from OSAP. In February of 2009, an agreement was finalized between BAASS and the MUFON board, which created a program funded by BAASS where MUFON was subcontracted to provide case report information from MUFON's CMS database directly to BAASS. This was known as the BAASS MUFON SIP Project, and it was facilitated using the MUFON STAR team. I was hired to coordinate and manage the program. The BAASS MUFON SIP Project was the most advanced, funded, rapid response UFO investigative team in the world. At the risk of being slightly narcissistic, I wanted to explain my qualifications that helped me to be hired to lead this project. I'm a licensed commercial pilot with a multi-engine instrument rating, and I have a bachelor's degree in aeronautical studies from Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. I have 3 decades of experience in paranormal research and investigative training, particularly with the anti-physical effects experienced during UAP incidents and abductions. My background included hundreds of interviews and investigations as head of the original MUFON STAR team. I was a former MUFON State Director of North Carolina and the former Chief Investigator of North Carolina and Virginia. Another qualification that I really think helped me get that position was during the post-9/11 period, I had served in federal law enforcement with Homeland Security as a liaison responsible for implementing federal procedures dealing with aviation security and all law enforcement agencies in Virginia that respond to airports during aviation emergencies. I was a member of the Anti-Terrorist Advisory Council Board organized by the U.S. Attorney's Office and frequently served as a key speaker on terrorism at the quarterly regional meetings. The purpose of the BAASS MUFON SIP project was in part to provide funding to professionally investigate UFO UAP events and make available information from the MUFON Witness Sighting Report Database CMS directly to BAASS. Part of this funding was also allocated to payroll a team of full-time dispatch operators who would work continuous shifts throughout the week and monitor the incoming sighting report. At that time, MUFON was an organization of volunteers with a wide variety of members with varying degrees of interest that were focused in many different directions. The idea of using the STAR team to separate the funded BAASS business from the general membership was taking shape. Since we suddenly had the capacity to pay people, we wanted to control the activities of the project and run it like a business, which made sense from an operational standpoint. So it was conveyed to the membership that the STAR team applications were being accepted for prospective employee positions for investigators and dispatch operators. On the other side of the mirror, at BAASS, during this same time, Bigelow had basically created his own UFO UAP investigative team at BAASS. They hired 50 top-notch scientists and experienced law enforcement investigators to do extensive lab analysis as well as conduct field investigations. Behind the scenes, they had $22 million budget and operated over a 3-year period. When I talk about on the other side of the mirror, I'm referring to the fact that a lot of the work done on that side of the mirror was classified. Recent disclosures by the Defense Intelligence Agency have confirmed that they were testing wreckage recovered from UFO crashes at Bigelow Aerospace underground facility in Las Vegas, which would obviously have been highly classified. I was not in the know on this, and since then there have been a number of individuals that have contested this. Skinwalker Ranch. During the time when the SIP project was operating, Bigelow owned the Skinwalker Ranch. There's been a lot of public interest in the extremely high strangeness associated with this mysterious place. A team known as NIDS, the National Institute for Discovery Sciences, was commissioned and financed in 1995 by Robert Bigelow. He set NIDS up to research and study various fringe science and paranormal topics, most notably ufology. Some very distinguished scientists and PhDs were part of the original NIDS team, which was headed up by Colm Kelleher. Many of these same people later worked behind the scenes at BAASS, including Colm, who headed up the BAASS team. I knew him and communicated with him regularly during the SIP project. He was a brilliant and distinguished individual who always was very courteous, professional, and honest with me. I considered him to be a friend. I understood that some of the BAASS team members were spending time conducting research at the ranch with various scientific instruments. I know the property was under heavy guard by armed security people and very secure. I've never been there, but looking back, I probably could have obtained permission to visit, but it never happened. The original MUFON STAR team. In September of 2008, a MUFON Journal article announcement in the director's message acknowledged my appointment as STAR Team Coordinator who facilitate communications and deployment. The original STAR Team consisted of 10 members. At that time, the new logo was unveiled in an article about the development of the logo, which is pictured here. There was some funding for expense reimbursement on a few of the cases, but most part it was still predominantly volunteer operation. MUFON had a little bit of money that they could use to reimburse for gasoline and mileage. When I became coordinator, they upgraded my access to MUFON CMS case management system to include access to all cases in all 50 states. And basically, I could see anything in there. Most of the investigators had their own equipment. Throughout the initial investigation of the Fayetteville abduction case, which was the first Discovery Channel, we videotaped many of the original witness interviews with high-definition video camcorders that I owned. Later, the Discovery Channel actually used some of that video footage in the TV productions. James Carrion was the international director of MUFON. We're pictured here with the late Bud Hopkins during the MUFON Symposium in Denver. One evening during the symposium, I had the good fortune to spend an evening with Bud Hopkins. We shared a table at dinner in the hotel and spent several hours talking. He He told me about how he got started and about all his incredible work with UFO abductees and regression hypnosis techniques that he developed. I'll always remember that evening I spent with him. He was an incredibly brilliant person who did some extraordinary research. At that same time, a TV production company was working with MUFON and sought to produce some UFO-related TV shows for Discovery Channel. And they decided to do a TV show called The Fayetteville Incident. James Carrion and I are pictured here while filming in Fayetteville, North Carolina. When the filming started, I worked with the producer's crew to coordinate filming in Fayetteville. Shortly after I was hired to manage the SIP project, I came in possession of a white paper known as Incommensurability, Orthodoxy, and the Physics of High Strangeness, a 6-layer model for anomalous phenomena by Vallée and Davis. John Schuessler had sent it to me, and I studied it intensely. I realized it was right on the mark as far as investigation and research about UAP phenomena. This 6-layer model for anomalous phenomena had become fundamental in my thinking, not only from a standpoint as how to evaluate case report information data, but how such reports should be written, how the respective databases should be maintained. In 2011, I wrote to Dr. Eric Davis and Dr. Jacques Vallée, the authors of the paper, and requested permission to reference it in my publications. You can see their responses here on the screen. Propulsion was the prime objective at BAASS. The focus of the project was to obtain evidence about propulsion, so events that involved objects in close proximity to buildings or on the ground were of high interest. Of particular interest were case reports that involved electronic equipment malfunction, like automatic lighting systems being activated, or security alarms going off during an event in progress. The magnetic signature on a vehicle or a cell phone battery that mysteriously discharged during an event would be highly valuable. Also, any evidence having to do with any kind of human injury like burns, marks, were carefully analyzed. Photographs would be of high interest if the photograph or video depicted halos of a specific color. Halos on photographs can be used to hypothesize the possibility of ionized fields or electromagnetism. BAASS did not share findings or test results. They were paying us $57,000 a month for information. We could freely investigate any case we choose and write reports about anything we desired without restriction. However, the deal clearly stated that BAASS was a private organization and their research was proprietary information, not to mention that some of the work that they were involved in was very highly classified. Remember, they were paying MUFON for case report information from the CMS database. We agreed from the beginning that they would not share their research findings or test results with us. I was the point of contact person between the MUFON team and BAASS, meaning I was the only person at MUFON who had direct access and daily contact with the individuals working at BAASS. Funding for the MUFON BAASS SIP project. We were getting 450 to 800 UFO case reports each month in the United States. We had a dispatch team that evaluated each case by paid employees, funding for deployment of investigators were paid, state-of-the-art equipment, standardized reporting, and operations and a management team, full-time paid employees. The operations team operated 24 hours, 7 days a week, and the manager was paid. Investigators were paid a daily rate, and dispatchers were paid hourly. We issued prepaid Visa cards to each one of the investigators to cover airline reservation, rental cars, hotel, lodging, meals, ground for transportation. Whenever a case was deployed, the operations manager put whatever amount was necessary on the Visa card for the investigator, so there was no money that had to come out of their own pocket. This was really a rapid response team that could go to any location in the United States very quickly. Dispatch. The dispatch operators actively manned a 24/7 watch on the database as new reports were coming in. They validated witness contact information and assessed believability. They assigned classification to each case as a Cat 1, 2, or 3, and we'll look at that in a minute. Out of 800 cases a month, we would typically get somewhere around 35 of them that were what we call significant reportable events. And from that, I'd deploy investigations teams on 5 or 8 of those significant cases each month. Equipment. We had some extraordinary, interesting equipment, like the ultraviolet visible spectroscopy lens that's pictured here. What you're looking at is a Tesla coil. In the visible range, you can see what it looks like with your eyes. At 310 nanometers, you can start to see an electromagnetic field. At the bottom of the screen, at 254 nanometers, you can actually see a picture of an electromagnetic field. The dispatch operation team was scheduled virtually and worked off of a web-based system. They reviewed incoming reports and they validated witness contact information and believability, and then they assigned a valet classification to each case in a Cat 1, 2, or 3. A series of questions were used to evaluate the sighting report. Question 1, did you witness a strange or unidentified light or object in the sky? Question 2, did the light or object land or affect in some way the immediate physical environment? Question 3, did any of the witnesses experience one or more of the following during or after an event? And those things were observations of beings or entities, interaction with non-human entities, experiences of missing time, wounds or trauma to the body of unknown origin, taken on board a craft, telepathic communication, out-of-body experience, encounter with an unknown animal. You can see by the little chart at the bottom of this slide, a Cat 1 was question 1 yes, question 2 no, question 3 no. A Cat 2 was question 1 yes, question 2 yes, question 3 no, and a Cat 3 was question 3 yes. You can see by this slide on the screen that significant reportable events were evaluated. Note that daytime observations and nighttime observations had different criteria. You can see by this slide that I was the person that had responsibility to deploy investigators. And there were some tips in there that said, once you've been activated for deployment, don't jump in your car and head for the airport. Slow down and plan your deployment. Take the following steps. Review the case, contact a witness, make an appointment to meet, finalize your plan, contact operations to make sure reservations for airline rental cars and hotels are done. MUFON operations makes travel arrangements. Your personal safety is the primary objective. Stay in touch with the coordinator, that's me, every day while on deployment. Pictured here is James Lakowski's book with Colin Kelleher and George Knapp, Inside the U.S. Government Covert UFO Programs. The MUFON STAR team provided critical investigative support for the Defense Intelligence Agency's Advanced Aerospace Weapons System Application Program. Dr. James Lakowski, DIA Program Manager and author of the book, commented on Richard Lang's work to support OSEP UAP investigation by stating, the excellent performance of Mr. Lang and his STAR team investigators contributed greatly to the success of the OSEP operations. This case study was significant because it highlighted the advantages of the BAASS MUFON SIP project, where we were looking at the entire Northern Hemisphere under one focus. Prior to that, MUFON was basically broken up into states, and each state director managed the investigations that were assigned to that state. This case occurred on the 4th of July weekend in 2009. There was a series of related events. There were a total of 38 reports. It occurred in Pennsylvania, Indiana, California. 38 witness reports coming in described bright red, orange balls, red, orange, and amber lights. There were 12 cases in Pennsylvania, in Bucks County, Beaver County, Delaware County, Lorenz County, Lawrence County, Lebanon County, and Northampton County. There were 11 cases in Indiana that all described the same thing. And in Southern California, there were 11 more cases in Los Angeles and San Bernardino. The team was able to develop some really significant data, basically tracking these orbs clear across the country. And finally, a case study about a famous case in Port Jervis, New York. December 25, 2009, Port Jervis, New York. The witness indicated that he remembered being stopped in his vehicle on the side of the road. He remembers pulling over and stopping to get a better look. He could see the object from the bottom and see the immediate area around the lights on the bottom of the object, but he could not distinguish overall shape. As the object passed directly overhead, the power in the witness's vehicle went off. Engine stopped, headlights went off, dash lights went off, radio went off. He reached for his cell phone and it was also dead, no power. He was sitting in the dark in his vehicle and hearing a humming sound that he described as like the purring of a cat. At some point, he tried to pull the power window down. Power was out, and it did not work. He opened the vehicle's driver door and looked up at the object. He could see the lights on the bottom of it as he attempted to lean out of the car with his seatbelt still on. Then the lights on the object went out. He's not sure if it took off or it just turned the lights off. Immediately, his vehicle was running again. Engine running, lights back on, music playing on the radio, and he noticed his cell phone lighted screen. He stated that the engine was just running. There was no sound of a starter motor kicking in, as noted during the normal engine startup phase. The witness described the experience as if watching a movie and someone pushed the pause button for about a minute and then they pushed the play button mode again. When the investigators arrived, there was a very strong magnetic field on the vehicle. The investigator said when he held his hand out, you could feel an electrostatic discharge like when you pull a sweater out of a cleaning bag. You can see pictured here, the meter was pegged. The car was a brand new Mitsubishi, and we were able to locate a dealership and found a car that was actually made on the assembly line, 5 cars from where this subject vehicle was manufactured. We went there and did tests on the vehicle to make sure there wasn't some kind of strange magnetic anomaly associated with that make and model of car, and obviously there wasn't. Pictured here is a magnetic survey that was done with a compass. You can see on the slide at the bottom, the survey was done 36 hours after the event. When we went back 20 days later, you can see how the magnetic field has dissipated slightly. Most of it was in the front of the car where the metal is. This is the location where the witness vehicle was parked. The witness experienced no physiological effects. There were no illnesses afterwards, and there was no incidents of missing time. This is a copy of the actual report that was submitted to BAASS, and you can see it was a very standardized format with specific information that was required. As a final note, everyone involved with the BAASS MUFON SIP project was required to sign a confidentiality non-disclosure agreement, which is pictured here, that required complete confidentiality while the case was being investigated. The agreement stated that after the cases were completed and the case report was published in the MUFON Journal, the information was to be made available publicly. I personally published 87 case reports from the BAASS MUFON SIP project in the MUFON Journal, which now should be considered public information. If you've enjoyed this podcast, my book, which you see pictured here, has several chapters with much more detail about the MUFON BAASS SIP project. It's available on Amazon, and you can find it with the link on the screen. Please check out our website at AEROPS.site. You'll be able to find current posts, new information, and a list of advisory board members. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.